Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you are doing great this Wednesday afternoon, actually Thursday afternoon, and welcome to today's session. We want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us this afternoon. I am Irene Rico, the Associate Administrator with the Office of Civil Rights here in Federal Highway Administration. And as you all are very aware, equity is a cornerstone of President Biden's administration, and the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program is a very important tool to ensure equity in infrastructure investments. President Biden and Secretary Buttigieg also recognize that the DBE program is a key strategy in generating wealth by facilitating opportunities for small and disadvantaged businesses to compete fairly on various types of procurements and opportunities that flow through the Department of Transportation. This is very important as we are working to implement the bipartisan infrastructure law that provides billions of funds that will translate into increased opportunities for DBEs in the work that the department will be rolling out. Over the last 2 years, the U.S. Department of Transportation, in particular, the Department of Office of Civil Rights, as well as the MOs of Federal Aviation, Federal Highway Administration, and Federal Transit Administration, and the DBE teams of those respective modes have been working very hard in submitting a lot of hours to develop the recommendations to respond to your feedback and to provide over the years a much more modernized DBE program while continuing to meet its objective, which is to prevent discrimination and remedying the effects of past discrimination in the nation's transportation industry. So today's session is the second in a series of stakeholder sessions to provide an overview of the various sections in the NPRM and communicate how you and your colleagues can share your thoughts on the proposals during the public comment period. So we encourage you to submit your comments. Today's session consists of an overview of the proposed revisions in the rule that pertains to DBE suppliers. For many years, USDOT and in particular FHWA have received comments, concerns, and proposed changes regarding the multiple sections of this provision. This regulation created the term regular dealer and determines how various types of supplying services will count towards a goal and the recipient's overall DBE goal. The proposals you see in this area seek to simplify the rule and make it more flexible and more reasonable. They include clarifying existing terms, addressing current industry practice, and modifying how various DBE supplying services will be counted. So again, we invite your feedback on these proposals and the entire NPRM. Thank you again for attending to this session. Now I would like to turn it over to Ms. Martha Kenley, who is FHWA's DBE Program Manager. Thank you, Martha.
Thank you, Irene, and thank you for leading us off on such an exciting outreach session. Again, I echo Irene, thank you for attending today's NPRM outreach session on the proposed changes to 49 CFR 26.55 that pertains to everything that relates to DBE suppliers, including manufacturers, regular dealers, transaction facilitators, etc. The purpose of these sessions is to provide a deeper dive into the various proposed revisions to the DBE regulations, and primarily for you to know how to access the NPRM within the online Federal Register and to encourage you to provide written comment. This session also provides you an opportunity to enter your comments in the Q&A box, as well as use the raised hand feature at the end of the presentation to provide your comments out loud. Either way, we will record your comments in the Federal Register site. While you may ask questions after the presentation, understand that due to the nature of the NPRM process, we will only be able to answer general clarifying questions, and unfortunately may need to direct you back to the NPRM itself, where you can feel free not only to express opinions, but indicate where proposed changes are unclear or ambiguous. I'm going to turn off my camera right now so that we can focus on the slides. At least I thought I was going to. There. Okay. So I'm going to stay on this slide. Actually, I think I'm going to go to this slide. Okay. Stay on this slide, Janelle. Janelle Hinton from my office is helping me advance the slides. So, of course, as Renee said, regular dealers, suppliers, transaction facilitators have long been a topic of interest in the field. Many have contacted DOCR and the modal administrations, including me, probably I would say Federal Highway in particular, to talk about concerns the current regulations have on the industry and DBE's suppliers' ability to compete with their non-DBE counterparts. The department has held several outreach sessions over the years, most recently in 2018, for stakeholders to express their concerns and provide potential solutions. The proposed revisions in this NPRM were drafted with those comments and many others in mind, in hopes that they will be clearer and better reflect current industry practice while remaining true to the DBE program's objectives of leveling the playing field so that all contractors can compete fairly for DOT-assisted contracts. Next slide. So we know that a DBE manufacturer is allowed 100% credit of the cost of supplies and materials it manufactures toward a contract goal or the recipient's overall goal, both. The department has learned from the various operating administrations that the definition of a DBE manufacturer should be clarified to assist recipients in evaluating whether a DBE's services are actually that of a manufacturer. In response, we propose revising Section 2655E1 to clarify the meaning of the term manufacturer. A DBE is a manufacturer if it owns or leases and operates a factory or establishment that produces the materials, supplies, articles, or equipment required under the contract. Manufacturing also includes blending or modifying raw materials or assembling components to create the product to meet the specifications. A DBE does not meet the definition of a manufacturer, however, when it makes minor modifications to the materials, supplies, articles, or equipment. Next slide, please. Evaluating whether a firm meets the criteria of 26E2, regular dealer, is a contract-by-contract determination to be made by the recipient. In evaluating whether a DBE firm should receive 60% credit for items it supplies on a particular contract, a recipient should answer two questions. If the answer to either question is no, then the firm should not receive 60% credit. So first, does the firm regularly engage in the purchase and sale or lease to the general public in the usual course of its business products of the general character involved in the contract for which DBE credit is sought? Answering this question involves attention to the activities of the business over time, both within and outside the context of the DBE program. The distinction to be drawn is between the regular sale or lease of the products in question and merely occasional or ad hoc involvement with them. So recipients should not insist that every single item the firm supplies be physically present in the firm's store, warehouse, etc., before it is sold to a contractor. However, the establishment in which the firm keeps items it sells to the general public should be more than a token location. For example, a mere showroom, the existence of a hard copy or online catalog, or the presence of small amounts of material that make questionable the ability of the firm to effectively supply quantities typically needed on a contract are generally not sufficient to demonstrate that a firm regularly deals in the item. So, second is the role the firm plays on the specific contract in question. Is it consistent with the regular sale or lease of the products, as distinct from a role better understood as that of a broker, manufacturer's representative, or a transaction facilitator? For example, a firm that regularly stocks and sells product X on a particular contract simply communicate a prime contractor's order for product Y to the manufacturer is acting as a transaction expediter. In other words, it sells X, but it's going to call the manufacturer to request Y. That does not mean that it is of the general quantity that the supplier sells. So it can be confusing. We know that. So evaluating whether a firm, I'm sorry, I lost my page all of a sudden. Okay, so then, 2655E2 then proposes to define the phrase of the general character to mean items that share the same characteristics and application as those specified in the contract. That would allow the DBE supplier to maintain an inventory that might contain a variant of the particular product with respect to dimensions, for example, but not its material characteristics to the extent that it would have no application in a US DOT construction process. So those two are trying to better define sufficient quantities and general character. And finally, 26.55E24 proposes to require that a recipient develop a system that ensures a sound basis for preliminary counting at the pre-award or subcontract approval stage in the context of race neutral. Often, recipients see a prime contractor's pre-award commitment of 60% of the cost of supplies and take it at face value to determine if a prime contractor met the DBE goal prior to award. So this portion of the NPRM proposes to require recipients to implement a system to evaluate whether the DBE suppliers listed on the commitment maintain sufficient inventories of the item in question and whether the materials will come from this inventory. This would allow recipients to ask questions such as whether all the materials are going to be coming from the DBE's inventory, and if not, what material quantities will be delivered from a source other than the DBE's inventory, typically from the manufacturer. This would then further require disclosure of quantities to be provided from other sources as part of their pre-award evaluation of the DBE's capacity and intent for preliminary counting. This system would apply to both regular dealers with establishments and inventories and bulk item dealers without inventories. With respect to bulk items, the questions would include, does the DBE supplier of bulk items have distribution equipment? And not only that, will the distribution equipment be used to deliver the products owned and operated? Will that distribution equipment, is it owned and operated by the DBE, and will it be used to deliver the products? So obviously, this is not a replacement for a cuff review in the field. But these pre-award practices have been found to avoid overcounting in the field that result in limiting participation by other DBEs. So by doing this upfront, asking some preliminary questions, it really does help a smoother process in the field to avoid terminations or problems with cuff reviews. So pre-award, though, at that pre-award stage, should the additional information a recipient receives result in a determination that the committed DBE supplier services would not be entitled to the goal credit listed, or the 60%. The recipient would then determine that the contractor fell short of the goal and would then evaluate the bidder's good faith, bidder or contractor's good faith efforts to determine eligibility for contract award or subcontract approval. So that's a mouthful. Next slide, please. Okay. This one is a continued. This one allows the proposal would eliminate the burden on recipients to segregate minor quantities from an order that was fulfilled mainly from the DBE's existing inventory. So the cost of items leased or sold to be counted at 60% when all or the major portion of which are provided from inventory, and any additional quantities provided by other sources are of the general character as those provided from the inventory. So this does eliminate the burden of segregating those minor quantities from an order that was fulfilled mainly from the inventory, and they would determine that by delivery slips or other relevant shipping documents such as bills of lading, which would need to be evaluated to confirm that the major quantities were in fact delivered from the DBE's inventory location. The next bullet is something new, a new proposal in which the department proposes to address suppliers of specialty items. This has come up a lot. And this is a common scenario in which a DBE supplies items that are not typically stocked due to their unique characteristic, meaning they have a limited shelf life, or specialty items required by contractors on an ad hoc basis. We consider a DBE supplier that operates in this manner as a regular dealer of bulk items that can receive 60% for the items only if it owns and operates its own distribution equipment. So we propose again that the recipient include in its pre-award a system or procedures to determine whether this DBE supplier of these specialty items will operate its own distribution equipment in order to be entitled to 60%. So in other words, it's making clear that the DBE supplier of specialty items will be treated in the same manner as DBEs of bulk items when it comes to requirements and counting. Next slide, please. During the 2018 stakeholder meetings about regular dealers, the department learned from many that the prohibition of drop shipping materials is especially of concern to DBEs with distributorship agreements for the supply of bulk items. Those with distributorship agreements conveyed that these agreements with manufacturers are limited in nature, costly, and require them to assume significant risk of loss or damage. They stressed that the requirement that they use and operate their own distribution equipment to deliver the products is a barrier to their ability to compete fairly with other suppliers of bulk items. So recognizing that a DBE with a distributorship agreement typically has more control regarding the quality of materials and bears a significant risk, the department to add language to 2655E3 to allow materials or supplies purchased from a DBE distributor that neither maintains sufficient inventory nor uses its own distribution equipment for the products in question to receive 40% of the cost of materials, including transportation costs. In this section, a DBE distributor is defined as an established business that engages in the regular sale or lease of the general character of items specified by the contract and described under a valid distributorship agreement. This section further explains that a DBE distributor performs a CUF, entitling it to 40% credit when it operates in accordance with the terms of its distributorship agreement. And with respect to shipping, the DBE distributor must assume the risk for lost or damaged goods. The department proposes that recipients review the language in the distributorship agreement prior to contract award to determine their validity relevant to each purchase order or subcontract and the risk assumed by the DBE. Where the DBE distributor drop ships materials without assuming risk or otherwise does not operate in accordance with its distributorship agreement, credit is limited then to fees and commissions. So the basis for the 40% is to account for the cost difference that regular dealers have in maintaining an inventory. These costs are known to be somewhere between 20 to 25% of industry value. And so the proposal for the 40% credit is based upon that understanding. Okay. So next slide, please. Okay. During the 2018 stakeholder meetings that I mentioned earlier, some DBE participants conveyed that although crediting suppliers is limited to 60% of the value of the contract, of the supplies, Some contractors are still able to meet all or most of a contract goal through DBE suppliers, especially suppliers that provide high cost or bulk items such as petroleum or steel, diminishing or even eliminating the need for the prime to employ additional DBE subcontractors on a project. In consideration of the comments received, the department is proposing to revise this part by adding a provision at 2655E6 to limit the total allowable credit for a prime contractor's expenditures with DBE suppliers, including manufacturers, regular dealers, distributors, and transaction facilitators, to no more than 50% of the contract goal. However, this revision would allow exceptions to the crediting limit, that 50% for DBE suppliers on a contract by contract basis. For example, certain contracts may be material intensive with prior approval of the appropriate operating administration. That, of course, is Federal Highway, FTA, FAA. So again, that is something new, and we are asking for comment on limiting supplier credit to 50%, regardless of its manufacturer, transaction facility, distributorship, regular dealer, 50% of the total goal credit. Next slide, please. So that concludes the deep dive, if you will, for the DBE supplier 2655 proposed revisions. We have some upcoming outreach sessions. As you can see, I have them posted here. Next week, we'll have ACDBE regulations. Then we have a meeting on the proposed design, build, and performance plans addition to the regulations. And then our final public meeting will be on August 26th from 1 to 3. Again, please read the NPRM and the regulatory impact analysis. If you do have this, you will have access to this, so you can access it at that link. And please provide any comments you may have on either document, so either at a session or online. So at this time, thank you to those who have provided comments in the Q&A. I'm going to ask Janelle, is there anything in the Q&A that resembles a question for clarification, or are they limited to comments that we will add to the Federal Register? And I would turn it over to Laquami too, who is our host here from DOCR for further instruction. So before Janelle, let's move to Laquami, and then Janelle, I'm going to ask you or Laquami to look in that chat box. And after that, we will allow you to use the raise hand feature to ask a question, or better than a question, provide a comment out loud that we can record and then add to the Federal Register. Laquami?
Thank you, Martha. We have some questions generally about the pre-award supply evaluation, and it seems like there's confusion as to whether it's a part of pre-qualification or actually considered a CUF evaluation. So I'm not sure if you want to go over
Sure.
Pre-award supply evaluations
Sure.
and what it actually we are actually proposing.
Yeah. So I guess I could use my example. I was at the Indiana State DOT and doing the DBE program, administering the DBE program, and we would get, after a contract letting, we would get the proposed commitments from each proposer or contractor bidder. And they would list various DBEs that they're committing to as a condition of award in order to meet the goal. We were race conscious primarily state at that time. And then part of it, they could maybe say XYZ DBE to provide materials and they would say what the materials were, 60%, and that would be 60% of the cost of materials. And that would just perhaps be assumed that that would be what would qualify. They would qualify for that 60%. So we would be making assumptions, we or others, that they would actually be performing as a regular dealer, meeting those requirements, that they had a warehouse with sufficient industry, or they had, a bulk, they did provide those bulk items in sufficient quantities, and that was a regular part of their business. But what we would found is if we just made that assumption up front, it has nothing to do with pre-qualification. It's really just trying to get some clarity before contract award so that once it goes into the field, there's a better chance that during a cuff review, that DBE supplier is going to be indeed considered a regular dealer and get counted for 60%. And so we're proposing that the recipient have a process just to do some upfront work to just sort of confirm that, okay, this material supplier, is this firm, a firm, do they have a store or warehouse? And of course, you may know that already if you deal with these DBs frequently. Is the supply of the typical kind that they would supply on a regular basis to the public involved, a public that would be interested in purchasing those products? And are they of sufficient quantities? Are they of the sufficient type? So that you would feel pretty good about, yes, that DBE would be then acting as a regular dealer in the field and kind of sort of alleviating some questions up front so that we don't have a huge risk in the field during the actual cuff review. So that's kind of what we're proposing, and it could be very flexible in ways that recipient wants to do this. In fact, some recipients already do. For example, for trucking, what's a trucking plan? Let me know how many trucks you're going to use, just to provide some clarity before they determine prior to award that the contractor or bidder has in fact met the award. Because they could say, okay, it looks like they've met the DBE goal, met the goal prior to award through these commitments. But do we really know that that 60% is going to result in a 60% of eligible for credit in the field before we really know what that DBE is going to perform and how they're going to perform it? For a bulk item supplier, do they actually have distribution equipment? And even more, are they going to use it? Or are they going to drop ship that? I think that's these questions we really need to know up front before we can be confident in determining whether that bidder contractor met the goal prior to award. And if they didn't, if we find that no, they really don't have distribution equipment, then they're probably not going to be able to be counted at the 60%. And so then we would need to then ask for good faith effort, saying, I don't think you've met this goal because of the way your firm is structured or because of the way your firm plans to operate in the field. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Martha. We actually have a raised hand from Cynthia. Cynthia, please unmute yourself and state your full name and affiliation before you provide your comment. Thank you.
Hi, this is Taylor Stam. I'm from Caltrans. For some reason on my Q&A, it shows me as my staff member's name. Anyways, I wanted to clarify. So it's not a distinct COF evaluation and it's not a pre-qualifying standard, that this is more of a pre-CUF evaluation during the contract evaluation.
Right. It's sort of a pre-cuff, like, okay, are we confident that once this supplier gets in the field, they are going to be performing in such a way that they would be entitled to 50% credit? So it's a way to give you some comfort that it looks like they can do it and they are intending to do that prior to approving that, determining that the goal was met.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for clarifying that.
You're welcome. And again, we're looking for comment. Please, this is a proposal. It's ripe for comment.
We have another raised hand from Allison. Allison, please state your full name and your affiliation.
My name is Allison Pedigo. I am with the Delaware Department of Transportation. Martha, I had a question and a suggestion on the manufacturer. Is there a reason that we kind of create our own definition for manufacturer and don't follow what the way that SBA has defined it in 13 CFR 121.406?
I don't know the reason why. I do know that this is the proposed definition. If you believe that it is wrong and that you would like to see the SBA definition, please indicate that comment, or from your question, we're recording this, we can make sure that that question gets into the NPRM.
And with respect to the 50% of the supplier credit on a contract, only being allowed up to 50% of the goal, in my opinion, that doesn't help remove barriers to participation of DBEs, although I understand it is a prevalent concern. So maybe as a middle ground, I might offer that the 50% of the total goal credit be applied only to the pre-award good faith effort, but that their entire participation be counted once they are approved and working toward the goal on the contract.
Okay, noted.
Thank you.
Thanks, Allison.
Thank you, Allison. We have a hand from Jeffrey. Jeffrey, please state your full name and affiliation. And you may unmute yourself. Jeffrey Sevilla.
Jeffrey, we can't hear you.
Jeffrey?
Did you unmute
I got it. I'm sorry. I got it. Sorry. This is Julie. Jeffrey works with us.
Okay.
I have
Julie, may you please state your full name and affiliation?
Julie D'Agostino. I'm president of JMD Building Products.
Thank you.
My concern, and I have a question, I have given this information to Martha, is that to put all materials in the same bucket and have the same rules for all of them is not keeping in mind what is industry practice for a particular industry. I work in the selling heavy construction and highway materials. I don't sell pens that you can have a whole, box of them, or or paper or anything. It's things that are very large and are most of the time are made to a particular spec, which I am involved with from the very beginning. And so to do to house those, to inventory those is impossible. But also for these materials, my industry materials, 95% of the time, the price I get from a manufacturer includes delivery. They will not take it out. So I end up having to double ship. And before I even have bid, I've lost the bid. And so I think that it's only, so my suggestion is the 60% if you deliver it yourself, 60% if you use a long-term truck lease agreement, or 60% if you insure the material from the point that it leaves the manufacturer to the time it is the contractor, which for my material is a very, very large premium. It's a massive premium. So I should be allowed to do any one of those three things, but preferably allow the insurance, because then I will not have to double charge, and I will be competitive with others that are selling the same material.
Julie, thank you for that suggestion. Please put it in the comments, and we will make sure that what you have said is recorded and entered into the Federal Register as well. I appreciate your perspective and your suggestions.
Thank you, Martha.
I see a hand up from Kevin Merchant. Kevin, can you please state your name and affiliation?
Kevin Merchant, I'm with West Virginia DOT. Martha, I'm starting to see quotes going out to primes to supply super steel structure, which to me would be specific to a particular project to be manufactured. And then most of these companies would most likely, and I guess I'm putting out an option, would be using a long-term trucking company to get it to the project, or may use their own trucking. Do you perceive that to be a commercial useful function for a large item like that, especially since it's specific to a particular, on a project by project basis?
Well, Kevin, I can't really answer that question in this context. For one thing, I would need to know a lot more details. And for another thing, really wanting to focus this on the proposed regulations. And if you do have a better suggestion that we would, I want to assure all of you that we really consider these very carefully. They are not going to be read or considered. So it's not just a formality. So please enter something into your comment, into this comment, or not sure I understood your comment exactly other than your cuff question. But if you have a comment on something you believe would be more effective for counting, please let us know. Enter it in the Q&A or in the NPRM itself.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Is there another hand raised?
Yes, this is Taylor Stam again from Caltrans. I've had my hand raised. Hi, I asked a question in the chat, but I'm wondering, would the local would the state DOT for the exemption from the 50% credit for suppliers, would that need to be submitted to FHWA every time?
Yes.
Okay. Just a comment, that would be very cumbersome. California, we have hundreds of projects at any given time. Maybe for smaller states, that wouldn't be a big deal if they've got, a handful that need exemptions, but the number of California projects that would need exemptions would likely, round out to, even 10% is over 100 contracts. So, my comment would be that there would need to be some delegation of authority, or that I actually do agree with the comment earlier that the 50% of participation being counted towards suppliers does seem to be a bit of an arduous rule, particularly for the field and for our contractors, particularly prime contractors who are seeking to participate in the program and are doing their due diligence to make the right efforts. So I think I agree with the previous comment that it can be counted that way towards the pre-award, but I think post-award, it should be based on the participation that they actually get. And thanks for listening.
Of course, and that is recorded. We will add that. Thank you. And just if you are interested in the 50% and the various iterations, it's something that the department has struggled with since the beginning of these regulations. If you'll read in the preamble, there's quite the history of how to determine, how to divide up suppliers versus actual subcontractors that are furnishing and installing. Is it fair for primes to, base their goal attainment mainly on suppliers, and that sort of eliminates others from receiving opportunities for their actual subcontracting labor, or consultants actually providing that type of thing. So it's been a long question with the department. It's gone back and forth and had several iterations, so it may help for you to read that when considering your question too, just to kind of put this whole thing in context.
Okay, I see another hand raised for Samuel Williams. Please unmute yourself and state your first and last name and affiliation.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Samuel Williams. I'm with IDS Global. We're a consulting firm in the state of Georgia. And we've not had any problems with the certification process. The problems that most of the minority consultants in the state of Georgia face is once we get on a contract, the prime doesn't utilize our service. and we've been, we've been meeting with the state, trying to get utilization rates up. And I'm wondering if this process is going to actually get in there and do any of the monitoring to ensure that the minority contractors actually get the work that they go out and accomplish.
So Samuel, I think your question is, you are listed on a commitment, but sometimes are not actually asked to perform on the contract?
Correct.
Okay. What I'm going to ask for you to do is contact your federal highway arm there, and we can look into that. That's sort of a question outside of the context of this, but something we would want to pursue at another time. And so please do that, and that'd be great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? I know that regular dealer, the term gives everybody convulsions, including me, because it has been such an area that of concern, and we're trying to get it right. So again, please provide your comments, raise your hand, type them in the Q&A, or go into the Federal Register. Really, really appreciate it, and we will consider them all. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. I just wanted to remind everyone that we've included a copy of this presentation and a copy of the portion of the NPRM that relates to this topic. And it's within the chat box. So with that, we will move on to Alfred Isaacs. Alfred, can you please state your full name and affiliation?
Alfred, did you unmute yourself?
Alfred is unmuted. Okay, we will continue with Kimberly. Kimberly Wilson, please restate your name and affiliation.
Kimberly Wilson, Port of Oakland. Hello, Laquame. Nice to see you and Martha, actually. I don't know. Anyway, so question one is, you said that there were some links in the chat. I can't see anything in the chat. And I'm wondering, once this the changes occur, will there be additional guidance, and will the 4-day training on DBE talk about how to implement these regulations? Because some of these proposed changes really alter the basics of contract compliance, and it would be great to have consistency in its implementation.
So Kimberly, first I would say these are only yet proposals. You know, they're not final, but I can see many of these would be very ripe for a Q&A. And so, yes, I think, you know, as with all the regulations, if there's a need for Q&A, and there probably will be, you know, we certainly would follow up with that.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I will repost to the chat. This is a copy of the presentation and the portion of the NPRM that relates to supplier credit.
Laquame, did you correct?
It says that the chat is disabled.
Yeah, but we could provide it to you. So I will provide that as soon as possible. And I also wanted to state that everything can be found regarding the NPRM on the NPRM's webpage, which is transportation.gov/DBE-rulemaking, one word. Transportation.gov/DBE-rulemaking.
Laquame, did we correct the typo about the day of the final of one of the NPRM outreach sessions?
There was a typo?
I think something was Tuesday, it was supposed to be Friday, or,
Well, it's all listed on the webpage. If okay, no, it's Friday, August 19th, which is in the material.
okay, sorry about
So
that.
we apologize, and what I'll do is I will make the correction right now, and we will include it into this chat box.
And I think I may have to make that change to, I sent out to our division offices who were supposed to share that with the state. So I will revise that email as well, if I in fact made the same mistake, which I probably did. Sorry about that.
No worries, I'm saving this as we speak. In the meantime, do we have any more comments? Please raise your hand. We have a comment from Ronald Brown. Ronald Brown, please state your full name and affiliation.
Hi, my name is Ronald Brown. I'm with the Illinois Department of Transportation. Submitted a question in the Q&A that I guess we hadn't gotten to yet, but I was questioning, the question I had was in relation to the 50% material supply for total gold credit. Is it possible to issue a set of criteria for state DOTs to review to determine if it actually needed to have FHWA exemption or not?
I think that's probably something you could put as a proposal, Ronald.
Into the comment section for the NPRM?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll consider that question as a comment
Okay.
for the purposes of this session, but we encourage you to submit a formal comment through.
And maybe you think there should be no exception at all. That could be another option. So, really, there's a lot of options that we appreciate you submitting your ideas.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome, Ronald.
We have another hand raised from Marcos. Marcos, please state your full name and affiliation.
Marco Canales, president of Laser Bridge Industries. I just put this question in the chat. I had a question about the 50% max for material suppliers. I think it was brought up that other DBE companies brought this up. Was that a percentage of a bunch of DBE companies, or was it 100? Because that's a big number that you may be moving. That's my question. I mean, were there a lot of studies done?
There were a lot of comments considered, yes.
But yeah, to that extent, a lot meaning 200 DBEs or thousands and thousands, or is it percentage of contracts? That's my.
Yeah, I can't answer that question.
Okay, I would just want to, there's always going to be some unhappy DBEs.
Of course.
So, and I am a DBE company. I was just wondering, there was some research into this thing.
Yeah,
correct?
I think you can definitely ask that question in the NPRM to see if we can answer that offline. Mm-hmm.
That's all I wanted. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I do not see any other hands raised. I am working on providing the file for everyone to download.
Please feel free to raise your hand. We're happy to have you heard.
Alfred Isaacs, I see your hand is raised. Please state your full name and affiliation. Alfred?
Maybe he stepped away after he raised his hand. I don't know. Alfred, are you unmuted? Is there anyone else, Laquami?
We do have another hand up from Zanab. Zanab, please state your full name and your affiliation.
Hi, yes, this is Zainab Jassim with the Missouri DOT. I had a question about the pre-award verification for the DBE suppliers. So is that intended to be conducted per contract? So the questions would be asked of each DBE supplier on every contract that they are submitted for a DBE goal.
I think there's some flexibility there. I think the idea is whatever, a recipient believes would be an effective practice, to just feel comfortable that the DBE listed as the supplier, whether it's on a contract by contract basis or whether you feel like they have demonstrated, traditionally that they are going to be they traditionally operate as a regular dealer. There might be some flexibility that you might not need to ask it over and over. But, understanding that if they've operated as a regular dealer on one contract, they may not on another one. They may just be a transaction facilitator. So it's flexible, and it is something that we appreciate comments on.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Do we have any more comments using the raise hand feature? There's one question for clarification that I see, which asks if we can clarify where to find the preamble of the NPRM, and is that just the beginning summary section, the beginning of the summary section? So the preamble is it's the beginning of the NPRM document before the actual proposed rules are stated. And that can be a link to the NPRM is found on the Federal Register. But the easiest way to find this NPRM is via our webpage, transportation.gov/DBE rulemaking.
So yeah, what I usually do, to be honest, when I look at an NPRM, if there's a specific topic, I do Control Find, type in the topic, and it will tell me, where it appears. And then so you can see that there's a preamble, which is sort of the introductory, talking about why the department proposed to make the rules, and then followed by the actual rule itself. Did I say something wrong, Laquami?
No, there was a question, which is actually an invitation for you to speak at the National Association of Women in Contracts in Hartford, Connecticut in September. So you have an invite.
Thank you. Could you email me at martha.kenley@dot.gov? That's kind.
I see we have a raised hand from Ashley. Ashley, please state your full name and affiliation. Ashley, you can unmute yourself. Ashley?
Maybe Ashley's with Alfred. If you do unmute yourself, please, we'll be happy to listen.
And just for Ashley, It seemed like she or he unmuted for a second. Ashley just signed off, so maybe Ashley may be a little camera shy.
Hopefully she added her comment.
Do we have anyone else that wants to submit a comment using the raised hand feature? Again, we are not reading all the questions and comments out loud. We are trying to address clarifying questions, clarifying answers to certain questions, which we can answer during the session. If you would like to provide comments directly in the Q&A, feel free to use it, or you may choose to provide your comment orally. We have a hand up from Lorraine Aldridge. Lorraine, please state your full name and affiliation.
Hi, it's Lorraine Aldridge, DBLO at Metrolink. Just a quick comment. The link that you just provided, transportation.gov/DBE rulemaking, that link doesn't work. So do you have a better one?
It would be /DBE-rulemaking.
Hyphen, got it. Thank you.
Hyphen in there, yeah. And we'll provide the link directly in the chat.
Thank you.
Next, I see Angela has her hand up. Angela, please state your full name and provide your affiliation before you give your comment.
Actually, it's Radonna Peterson, ODOT, Oregon, Oregon Department of Transportation. Angela sent me the invite. That's why her name came up. Could you just repeat where I can find this recording? I think I missed it or didn't write it down right or whatever. So you said you had recorded these in previous ones, and I'd like to go find those, please.
They all appear on our DBE rulemaking webpage. We will provide the link in the chat box for you again, but it's transportation.gov /DBE-rulemaking. Specifically, the videos are on, there's a link to public meetings and information sessions. So they're contained on that page.
Thank you.
Welcome. The hand for Lorraine Aldridge is still raised. So, okay. That went down. Any other comments? Now is your opportunity to participate in the rulemaking process. All right, so thank you all. This concludes today's session. Again, the transcript will be made available in the upcoming days and posted to the rulemaking docket on regulations.gov. We will also have a copy of this transcript on our webpage shortly, hopefully by the end of next week. Martha, do you want to close this up?
Sure. Thank you very much. I really appreciate everyone attending. And I know this was on regular dealer, but there is a lot in the NPRM. So I encourage you to read the entire thing. It's really not that dull. And the preamble too, which really kind of sets the stage as to why the department considered the regulations to be in need of revision and why. And again, these are just proposals, so please provide all of your comments. Really appreciate you attending. And I know this is a difficult topic, so really look forward to hearing and reading your comments, proposals, questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.